You've been lied to about breath support for singing by your vocal coach, either whether it's somebody online on YouTube or your actual vocal coach in real life, or even, yes, indeed, me. And I'll get into that in a minute because it's going to be kind of a little bit funny in a way. Why is it important? Because without good breath support, you won't be able to sing as well as you can with good breath support. I've seen a lot of people that have a lot of followers and they're talking about breath support incorrectly. And what do I mean by incorrectly? Okay, does that mean there's only one way to do breath support? No, there isn't. That's why they get away with it. That's why they get away with lying to you. And that's why you think that it works, or it's working, but you think that that's the way to sing because you're doing it and you've been doing it and it seems to work. And why do I know all this? Because I used to do that myself, probably in the way that you're doing it, like something to do with your belly. If you're watching a ton of YouTube videos, you've probably seen so many different ways, like a lot of different ways to do breath support. And they say, this is the way to do breath support. Well, that's the first lie, is that this is the way to do breath support. Because you can do breath support a ton of different ways. And I know that because I've tried all of the different ways. The most efficient way to breath support is a way that very few people are actually talking about. A lot of what you see about breath support, they talk about the belly. And I've seen probably the number one vocal coach on YouTube talk about breath support and point to her belly saying you got to sing from your diaphragm. And then I've heard also you have to make a diaphragmatic breath. It's impossible to breathe without your diaphragm. Well, unassisted. Okay, well, if you're on a ventilator, you're not using your diaphragm. If your diaphragm doesn't work and you're on a ventilator, you're not technically using your diaphragm. But if your diaphragm is not doing the work that it does, then you're not breathing. So a diaphragmatic breath is just to breathe.
So the diaphragm is our main muscle of inspiration, one that we can't live without.
Does that mean that every breath is a good singing breath? No, it doesn't, of course. Singing and breathing for singing is different than speaking. So singing is different than speaking, and breathing for singing has to be different for speaking. Unless, like in my case, I try to always breathe like I'm breathing for singing, so I'm always ready. I try to incorporate that into my daily breathing habits. Just to explain that a little bit, your diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscle that sits just below your lungs. It's attached to your lungs and your ribs. So it sits kind of right at the top of your ribs. People will say that the diaphragm is an involuntary muscle. Well, you can't literally just flex your diaphragm. But when you tell yourself to breathe in, you're telling your diaphragm to contract. And when it contracts, it sucks air into your lungs. And then your ribs expand as a result of the increased capacity in your lungs and everything. Your ribs will expand, your diaphragm flattens. And that is good breath support. If you have your diaphragm in that flattened position, your diaphragm is the thing that controls the outflow of your breath. But then when somebody has you do an exercise like, and I've done this myself, this is like this shh, like that exercise. And that could be good if you don't have strong abdominal muscles. So I did that for quite some time when I was rehabilitating my voice. I would do the exercise, and I would tighten my belly just to kind of like strengthen my abs. And that's good to have the ability to strengthen your abs because you will need some abdominal muscles when you're singing with breath support. But anytime people talk about pushing the belly out in any sense of the matter, like pushing the belly out, the belly has very little to do with the way you're singing. When your ribs are expanded out to the sides and your diaphragm is flat and you're singing, the only way for air to come out of your lungs then, if your diaphragm is flat when your ribs are wide, the only way for any air to expel out your lungs is to come up from the bottom. And what has to happen to come up from the bottom? Does the belly push out then to come up from the bottom? No, pushing your belly out just pushes your belly out. As a consequence of pushing your belly out, your diaphragm will have room to move down, but it's not attached to your belly. It's attached to your lungs and your ribs. So your belly just gets out of the way. Like your guts will get out of the way so your diaphragm can go down. So when you breathe and you breathe into that belly breath, your diaphragm it's contracting and it's flattening. Therefore, it's pushing your guts out. And that's fine. That's as a result of that. But if you just keep your ribs expanded and you use your diaphragm for what it's for, is to slowly maintain a slow, steady breath out. That's a slow, steady breath going out. I'm not forcing, I'm not going, or, there's very little going on, but there's no rapid kind of convulsions going on in my belly. It's kind of a slow pull in of the belly. It's just to help move the air out of the lungs, to keep that going slowly. And I used to think that there was a lot of work to be had in the belly, and that does work. That's the problem. Doing all those things, thinking about the belly and pushing down and like that works, but it's so much effort. You're bearing down and I mean, you could still do that, but there's so much tension involved, and tension that's down in your abdomen. And when you're pushing from there, you can do that. You can sing. It's just so much more effort, and you're really kind of forcefully pushing the air out. The vocal folds need very little breath to make them move. So anything you're doing like forcing and all that, like there's too much force coming upon your vocal folds. And you don't need to do that. Just there's easier way to sing. There's lots of different ways to sing. There's lots of different ways to use support. And that's why I think some vocal coaches will teach it a certain way, because they can do that and they've gotten away with that. But it's a lot more effort than when you use the diaphragm correctly, more as kind of a stabilization point. And that's why they call it support. Support is not about pushing or shoving or like support is, think of a beam in a house. It's supporting the next level up there. It's not pushing the level. It's not kind of forcing anything up. It's just there, stable. And that's what you really want with your support. I thought support was 80% of everything that you really need to do. Support is important. You can't sing well and efficiently without support. I don't think it's really 80% of the whole thing anymore. I mean, like and the issue was that my support was terrible at the time. That's another thing. When you're watching like a vocal coach talk about something is like the most important thing, like vowel modification is the most important thing. That sometimes is something that they're struggling with. A lot of times vocal coaches will teach something that they're struggling with because they're trying to get over that hurdle themselves, or maybe they feel like they've gotten past that. Vowel modification is a good way to get past the inability to sing certain vowels, but that's not the problem. And I've done a video on that before, and I'll put the link up at the end. There's a playlist, and you can see it in the playlist that's there. Really, if you're using support as like, if you're forcing with your support, if there's any kind of drastic movements, then you're probably just working too hard at it. I mean, you really don't need to watch any incredible singer, like watch any amazing singer, like pop, rock, whatever. It doesn't matter. They're not working as hard as you might think they're actually working. Like singing is a lot of work, and it is physical in the support area, but it's not as strenuous as you would think, especially if you practice it on a regular basis. If you practice good support, and in my course, Singing Support Secrets, that will teach good support. That's the support that I use now. I've found the most efficient way to sing. But like I said, if you're working with something that like is working for you, keep doing it. I mean, if it's, I don't want to change anything that you're doing if you think it's working for you, but if it's not working for you, consider changing. Like I said, you could do support several different ways, but if you want to work with me closer, there's links down below to do that, and you can become a member to the channel, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching. Rock your best vocals where your best keeps getting better.